Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the leaked exercise Cygnus report, which is the operation that took place in 2016 to prepare for this pandemic, what it entails and what its leaking means for Dominic Cummings' attempts to control the civil service. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, like I say, in 2016, Exercise Cygnus, which was run by the Conservative government that we still have, it's still hanging around like a bad smell, and it simulated a major global pandemic and its effects in the UK. And it was a viral pandemic, although at the time they were expecting a flu-like pandemic. In the end, we got a coronavirus-like pandemic. And the results of this were not good. But recommendations were made. They didn't go, do you know what, we're all boned. They said, right, okay, this is bad. This is what we need to do to put it right. Now, had these recommendations been implemented, there is absolutely zero doubt that we would have been in a much better shape for dealing with the coronavirus now. Boris Johnson likes to talk about the fact, we were the best prepared country in the world for this. Absolute horseshit. But we could have been. We genuinely could have been. Both in terms of lives saved, we could have actually been successful here. And even in terms of managing the economic damage as well. The problem is that the way a lot of Conservatives think, and certainly the way that Boris Johnson thinks, is you look at a situation, you say, okay, this scenario is going to unfold at some point. This is a disaster waiting to happen someday, and it's going to cost this and use these resources in order to make sure that we're ready to fend it off when it happens. And the Conservative minister looks at it and goes, it's not happening now. If I spend this money, it's like I'm wasting money because I'm spending money on something that's not actually happening. You can see the bind I'm in, can't you? And what happens is you don't actually implement any of it because money, and then you end up in this mess. And that was what happened. We didn't implement the recommendation. Also, it was reported that then Matt Hancock last month, the health secretary, said that he had asked officials, when it all came out in the press that this exercise had been done and the recommendations and why didn't we implement the recommendations, Matt Hancock said, do you know what, when it came up in the press, I asked my officials if the recommendations had been put in place. Because to be fair, when Exercise Cygnus was being done in 2016 and when the report was completed in 2017, Matt Hancock was not the health secretary. That was Jeremy Hunt. That being said, he was the health secretary at the time when things were supposed to be being implemented still. But there it is, he wasn't there at the time. So yes, fine. Ask your officials if they'd been implemented. And he says that he was told by his officials that they'd been implemented in full. But there were a few little odd things about his statement. And, very, very odd. The first is, if he, as health secretary, genuinely wanted to know if the recommendations had been implemented, you don't just say to your officials, by the way, were these things implemented? You don't do that. Because you're going to be, even if they had been, you're going to be asked detailed questions about them by journalists. So what you do is you say, can I see the reports, please, confirming that the recommendations were implemented and how they were implemented so that I am able to answer questions of journalists? You didn't do that. So that's suspicious behaviour number one. Two, why can't we ask the Permanent Secretary to the Department of Health, Sir Chris Wormold, to confirm this? Because he won't be able to lie. We know that, Permanent Secretaries. Why doesn't he face, a select committee of Parliament and answer that question? Were the recommendations carried out in full? Because he will not be able to say yes if they were not. Then the third thing was, why do those at the top, why do the healthcare bosses in England not know about this? Because as far as they're concerned, because they were asked about this, and as far as they were concerned, they weren't implemented at all. In fact, some of the provisions got worse. And any system would have to, of course, include care providers in the UK. Of course it would. So why is it then that the bosses that would have had to have been involved in the implementation, because you're talking about setting up systems in the NHS and in care homes as well as in government in general. So how come bosses of those areas of the industry are not aware of these recommendations being implemented? And many of these took part in the exercise itself and have been saying, we made recommendations that have not been implemented. So we also knew that that was rubbish. And then the fourth thing, absolute killer as far as I'm concerned, if the report had been implemented in full, let's say it had, which it should have been, why the refusal to publish it? Why keep it secret? It's not a top secret document. It's not labelled as top secret. It's not an issue of national security, even though it's putting in place the recommendations you could argue is a matter of national security. What's contained in the report is not. I mean, now we know the answer to all of those questions is that it's not just suspicious behaviour. The recommendations were not implemented. We're quite certain about that. How are we certain about that? We can read the report ourselves. I have got a copy of the report on my computer. I can give you a link to the article in the description below, of course. I'm not sure whether you'd be able to get access to it because I noticed I downloaded it from Scribd. Now, I've had a subscription to Scribd for some time, so I don't know whether I would have been able to get access to the download without that or not. But I'll put it there anyway, you can see for yourself. But yeah, I mean, the report has been leaked now. It's been redacted, names and addresses of officials and so on have been redacted, quite right too. But the actual report itself, and there's not much redacted, is on my computer now, and it can be on anyone else's computer that wants to have a look at it. But the leak itself is still curious. I mean, we know that it wasn't implemented. We know that we're in this mess because the government didn't implement it and they've tried to lie their way out of it again. But this report is something that the government desperately didn't want out in the public domain. Of course they didn't, because it highlights the fact that they did not prepare with warning. They like to say this is unprecedented and we acted as quickly as we could, but we didn't get very much warning, which is fooling a lot of their supporters. Those of us with a critical mind know it's rubbish for a few reasons. One, we got a damn sight more warning than some countries that have done better. And the other thing is, we know they've been warned about this for years. We didn't know exactly what virus it was going to be. We knew it was coming. We knew it was coming. And it's not even arrived really sooner than we expected. We didn't prepare for it despite the notice. That's all there is to it. But it is odd that it's been leaked, because there's a culture of bullying encouraged amongst the civil service these days with Boris Johnson's government. And being honest, I thought it would be much more unlikely to see documents as politically hot as this ever being leaked again. We had a fair few leaked last year, of course, Operation Yellowhammer and all the rest of it, because the civil service ultimately exists to serve the public. Not, strictly speaking, the government, if the government is not acting in the public interest. And so, it's very common if a government is corruptly trying to suppress information for someone in the civil service to go, this isn't right, and to leak it. And you can talk about the moral rights and wrongs of that if you like as well. But there it is. And Dominic Cummings will presumably be furious about this. But the fact that we now have access to this document means that he isn't getting things entirely his own way. He really wanted to put the civil service under the screw. And it means that there is also hope that although the government will constantly seek to keep their activities and failures from the public, some of them will come out anyway. It's the nature of conspiracies, really, isn't it? Genuine ones, because how do you tell the difference between a genuine conspiracy theory and a real one? And a made-up one, sorry. Genuine is real. A made-up one, sorry. And the genuine ones come out because someone will eventually decide, someone in the know will eventually decide that exposing it is the right thing to do, and they want to do the right thing. And the more people that have to be kept quiet, that have to be involved in a conspiracy, the more likely it is, and the quicker it will be before that one person actually leaks the evidence for it. Not some random claim, but actual evidence. Albeit trying to hide their role in the leak. Of course, they generally don't want to admit to being the leaker or the whistleblower. And the more people that are involved, the less likely it is that the whistleblower would be identified anyway if they wish to remain anonymous. And Cygnus involved a lot of people over multiple years, I suppose. And I suppose that would help to hide the identity of the person who leaked this. But there it is. The report is in the public domain now. Another egregious lie chalked up to the government. And I wonder if the weight of all these at some point is going to be too much for even Boris Johnson to carry. as well as his cabal at some point. Time will tell. But anyway, I hope you find the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.